Your motivation isn't broken. I need to say that first because you've probably spent the last 6 months assuming it is. You've tried the morning routines, you've downloaded the apps, you've watched someone on the internet tell you to take a 30-day dopamine detox, delete everything pleasurable from your life, sit in silence, and wait for your brain to reset, like a phone that's been in rice overnight. Maybe you even tried it, and maybe it worked for 4 days, and then it didn't. And now, you're back on the couch at 10 p.m., wondering what's actually wrong with you. Nothing is wrong with you. Something is wrong with your dopamine baseline, and those are not the same sentence. Here's what nobody explained to you properly. Dopamine is not a pleasure chemical. That's the version that went viral, and it's almost entirely misleading. Dopamine is a motivation chemical. It's the thing your brain releases not when you get the reward, but when you anticipate the reward. It's what makes you lean forward, reach for something, start something. When your baseline level of dopamine is healthy, starting doesn't feel like climbing, it feels like stepping. When your baseline is depleted, every task feels like it's behind a glass wall. You can see it, you can't reach it. You're not lazy, you're chemically flat. And the fix isn't a detox. The fix is a slow, quiet, daily restoration of the conditions your brain needs to produce dopamine at a functional, resting level. There are 14 of those conditions. None of them are dramatic. All of them are backed by research. And stacked together over weeks, they change the way your nervous system operates at rest. 1. Sunlight in the first hour after waking. Not through a window, not a sad lamp on your desk. Actual outdoor light hitting your retina within 60 minutes of opening your eyes. Andrew Huberman at Stanford has talked about this extensively, but the underlying research comes from circadian neuroscience that's decades old. Morning light triggers a cortisol pulse, the healthy one, the one that's supposed to happen, which initiates a dopamine and serotonin cascade that sets your neurochemical tone for the entire day. 10 minutes is enough. Overcast counts. You don't need sunshine. You need outdoor photons. Most people are starting their day in a dim room, staring at a screen, which is the photon equivalent of whispering when your brain needs someone to speak clearly. 2. Protein in your first meal. Dopamine is synthesized from an amino acid called tyrosine. Tyrosine comes from protein. If your first meal is cereal, toast, or nothing, you've started a neurochemical day without giving your brain the raw material it needs to build the molecule you're going to spend the next 14 hours wishing you had more of. Eggs, Greek yogurt, meat, legumes, 30 grams of protein before noon. This is not a diet recommendation. It's a supply chain correction. 3. Delay your caffeine by 60 to 90 minutes after waking. Caffeine works by blocking adenosine receptors, which temporarily increases dopamine receptor availability. But if you hit it the moment you open your eyes, you're overriding your cortisol pulse and creating an artificial spike that crashes by early afternoon. The crash isn't just tiredness, it's a dopamine dip that shows up as flatness, irritability, and the sudden sense that nothing you're working on matters. Waiting 90 minutes lets your natural waking system do its job first. The caffeine then amplifies a system that's already running instead of replacing one that never started. 4. No phone for the first 30 minutes. This one sounds like productivity advice. It isn't. It's neurochemistry. When you check your phone immediately upon waking, you're flooding a resting state brain with high-frequency variable reward. Notifications, messages, feeds, each one a micro spike of dopamine that your baseline hasn't prepared for. You're sprinting before you've stood up. The result is that your brain recalibrates its baseline around that level of stimulation, and everything that follows, your work, your conversations, your actual life, feels flat by comparison. The morning scroll doesn't start your day, it sets a ceiling on it. 5. Movement before noon. Not a gym session, not a PR attempt. Walking. 15 to 20 minutes of low-grade physical movement in the first half of your day. Research from the University of British Columbia shows that even mild aerobic activity increases dopamine and norepinephrine availability for hours afterward. The mechanism is simple. Your body was designed to move early. When it doesn't, your brain reads the stillness as a low-threat, low-reward environment and adjusts its chemistry accordingly. Moving tells your nervous system that the day has stakes, that something is happening, that it should be ready. 6. Music before the task, not during. This is the one most people get backwards. Listening to music you love triggers a significant dopamine response. But if you pair it with the work itself, you're splitting your brain's attention and associating the dopamine with the music, not the task. What high performers do, and what the research on anticipatory dopamine supports, is use music as a primer. Listen to the song that lights you up for 3 to 4 minutes before you sit down to work. Then start the work in silence. Your dopamine system is now elevated and looking for the next source of reward. The work becomes that source. You've redirected the chemical momentum. 7. Complete one small task before starting the big one. Your brain releases dopamine at task completion, not task initiation. When you start your day with a large, ambiguous project, you enter a state of effort without reward that can last hours. Starting with something small and finishable, making the bed, clearing the inbox, writing one paragraph, gives your brain a completion signal that primes it for the next effort. This is not about discipline. It's about sequencing your neurochemistry correctly. Stack the easy win first. Let the dopamine from finishing it carry you into the harder thing. 8. Single task in 25-minute blocks. Every time you switch between tasks, your prefrontal cortex burns glucose, and your dopamine system has to re-engage with a new reward prediction. Do this enough times, and by 2 p.m., you're not tired because you worked hard. You're tired because you context-switched your dopamine system into depletion. One task, 25 minutes, no tabs. The research on this, from Gloria Mark's work at UC Irvine, is unambiguous. Sustained attention on a single task is not a personality trait. It's a dopamine management strategy. 9. Eat tyrosine-rich foods throughout the day, not just at breakfast. Almonds, avocados, bananas, dark chocolate, chicken, pumpkin seeds. These are not superfoods. They're precursor delivery systems. Your brain doesn't store large amounts of tyrosine. It uses what's available in circulation. If you eat a protein-rich breakfast and then nothing with amino acid density until dinner, you've got a 6-hour gap in your dopamine supply chain. Snacking on tyrosine-rich foods keeps the production line running. 10. Cold exposure. 2 to 3 minutes of cold water at the end of your shower. The research on this from Susanna Soberg at the University of Copenhagen found that cold exposure increases baseline dopamine by up to 250%. And unlike most dopamine triggers, the elevation is slow, sustained, and doesn't produce a crash. It's not comfortable. It is, milligram for milligram, one of the most effective dopamine baseline interventions that exists without a prescription. 11. Novel experience. Learn one new thing per day, not to be productive, but to trigger your brain's novelty detection system. Dopamine evolved as a learning signal. When your environment is entirely predictable, your brain downregulates dopamine because there's nothing new to encode. A new recipe, a new route to work, a new concept in a field you know nothing about. These aren't self-improvement, they're neurochemical maintenance. 12. In-person social connection. Not texting, not a voice note. Face-to-face interaction triggers oxytocin, which modulates dopamine receptor sensitivity. Isolation doesn't just feel bad, it neurochemically dulls your ability to feel motivation. A 10-minute conversation with someone you actually like does more for your dopamine baseline than most supplements on the market. 13. Screens off 60 minutes before sleep. Not because of blue light. That's a smaller effect than people think. Because high stimulation content in the final hour before sleep suppresses REM. And REM is when your dopamine receptors reset and resensitize. Poor REM means you wake up with a lower baseline. The cycle then repeats. You start flat, chase stimulation, overshoot, crash, sleep poorly, wake up flatter. Turning off screens breaks the loop at the point where it costs you the least effort. 14. Same wake time every day, including weekends. Your dopamine system runs on circadian rhythm. When you shift your wake time by 90 minutes on Saturday, you're giving yourself social jet lag. And the dopamine dip on Monday morning isn't a motivation problem. It's a clock problem. Consistency of wake time is the single most underrated input into baseline neurochemistry. It's boring, it's free, it works. Here's what I need you to understand about these 14 things. None of them will change your life tomorrow. That's the point. The dopamine detox promises a reset. These don't. These promise a rebuild. Slow, undramatic, compounding. The reason your baseline is low is not because of one bad habit. It's because of dozens of small conditions that have been quietly pulling it down for months or years. And the way back up is not a dramatic intervention. It's a stack of small corrections that your brain barely notices individually, but registers collectively as a fundamentally different chemical environment. You are not unmotivated. You are undersupplied. And now you know exactly what the supply chain needs.